My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. Is there a connection between our souls, chakras, and vagus nerves? How may we understand the body's internal messages, not act against our bodies, and regain a soulful connection to self? My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, C.J. Llewelyn, says that an understanding of subtle energy and our nervous system will promote a journey to wellness. C.J. Llewelyn is a licensed professional counselor, trauma therapist, and intuitive Reiki master in the lineage of Dr. Mikao Usui. Her passion is combining the psychological, physical, and spiritual to heal trauma and facilitate personal and spiritual growth in her clients. Her work utilizes polyvagal theory, energy psychology, and a knowledge of the chakras and subtle energies. Her website is cjllewelyn.com, and she joins me this week to share her new book, Chakras, the Vagus Nerve, and Your Soul, Journeying to Wellness Through Subtle Energy and Your Nervous System. Please join me in welcoming back to Destination Unlimited, C.J. Llewelyn. Welcome back.
Hi, Victor. How have you been?
Wonderful, thank you. It's so nice to have you back on again and talk about the latest book in your series, Chakras, the Vagus Nerve, and Your Soul. And we're going to be getting into that shortly. But before, for listeners meeting you for the first time, please share your path and how it led to your calling.
Well, I am a trauma therapist and I am also a Reiki master. Those two paths have always been a little integrated. I have been in private practice for about 10 years. I've been practicing as a trauma therapist for over 15. I work very much with the body, helping the body process and release trauma, old trauma. And I was just seeing the patterns along the vagus nerve through polyvagal theory. I work with the foundation of what we call polyvagal theory, and clients can certainly look that up. Stephen Porges' work is changing the world. And I would see the messaging with my clients, whether they were processing through current traumas or have already released and getting new information through their bodies. I was noticing it aligning with their chakras, with the aspects of their body that were holding certain messages. And it was profound. And there's a lot of nerve endings that align with these chakras. And yogis have known this for years. So this is all about what everybody is. I hope this is where we're going in the world, where we are finally integrating science and what we would call spirituality, the etheric, the intuitive. So I'm very excited to be part of this journey and to be part of the messaging on this journey.
Your bio also shares that you are a traditional Reiki master. How did Reiki grace your life, and how do you use it in your practice?
So I do not use, when I'm working traditionally with a client, I do not actually use Reiki in the way that we would think Reiki is used. When someone comes to a Reiki session, you are doing hands-on. You are utilizing the energy. You are one-on-one with your client. What I do is I am noticing the energies, being attuned to the energies. I am noticing as we're working somatically what's running through the client's bodies. And I allow them the opportunity to tune into that message. Because if I didn't, I'd be stealing their power in this way. When we're, entering into a contract where it's hands-on, that's one thing. When we are entering into a contract where we are deeply working through the layers of attachment messaging, right, from early childhood, when we are deeply working through the layers of what has been stored in our body, how we're having neurobiological, physiological responses in our body, I I turn that back to them gently to help them attune to their energy, because that's where the power lies. It's within each of us anyway. So I am holding the space for this energy, but I am allowing this energy for my clients to connect to understand their own personal journey with it.
And Reiki, when it blessed my life, was life-changing for me. I'm just curious as to how Reiki came into your life.
Oh, it's life-changing. I have always seen energy. I was one of those kids. We could go on for a long time about what I used to see as a child. But I've always been very attuned to the energies. I, however, didn't know that. And I think, and a lot of people could probably relate to this, when you are attuning to the things that you don't necessarily see in a third dimensional way, you're feeling them. And so Reiki became the construct for me to understand how to appropriately channel energy, how to not take my other people's energies in, and how to stay within my own, and also how to channel, right? Universal energy, the energy that comes from a higher source, that we just step back and utilize through our own bodies. We take ourselves out of the picture, but we use our bodies as the container, as the channel to help send energy to others. So I ended up with some fantastic friends through the years. And one of my best friends, who's also does a lot of life between life work, she's a PhD nurse. She's now retired. So I love it because she has this very strong science background. She became my Reiki master. She became the one 20 years ago that helped me learn how to manage, channel, attune to these energies in a different way. And she's also created a foundation for me with just watching her work through the Newton Institute, working with life between life regressions as well. So she's one of my besties. I think she would be she's very humble, so I wouldn't call her one of my masters, but I would definitely say that she was one of my greatest influences when it came to doing the energy work.
You know, I was one of those kids also, growing up in the 1950s and 1960s, and I was told that I had an overactive imagination until one day my mother confirmed everything that I had been experiencing. Did you have the same type of thing?
I'm laughing, yes, because my mother used to say, "Oh, it's you and that woo-woo again. You and your father, you're just spooky." It's just, it probably is the Celtic blood. I don't know, but she used to say that all the time to me. But it was also very accepted. It wasn't rejecting. It was just sort of, I don't quite understand this, but I know that this is what you do.
Absolutely. In your practice, you employ internal family systems therapy and also EMDR. Please tell us about these modalities.
So EMDR is eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and I've been working in the EMDR world since the early 2010s. I can't believe I'm even saying that. And that was my first somatic experience as a therapist. I came into the therapy world thinking I was going to do couples work, and I'm leaving that one to someone else. I was so drawn to helping people with their trauma, and it very quickly understood that there needed to be more to this than just the talk therapy. So eye movement desensitization, me going back a second, was developed by a woman who has since passed, but she developed this process through noticing that she was thinking about something deeply and her eyes were moving back and forth in a way that mimicked REM sleep. And as all amazing modalities, experiences, discoveries are founded, they're founded initially with sort of the hypotheses of, wonder if this would work with therapy. Why am I doing this? This is REM sleep. REM sleep, we are working through our unprocessed, our aspects of ourselves that we can't even define in our dream world. So maybe this is something that we could apply to trauma. And she did. And through the years, she developed a protocol for trauma, and it is burgeoning now. I think everybody that has become a therapist and understands that trauma is not talked out has, at the very least of their foundations, EMDR and even brain spotting. Brain spotting is one of those neuro-experiential models that came from EMDR, and it uses eye movement, and it's got a very contained process to it, because when you actually are working through trauma, you don't just open the Pandora's box. I'm very careful with my new clients to explain that to them, because I think people come to trauma work or don't come to trauma work because they're terrified. We're just going to rip open that Pandora's box and everything's going to fly out. No, we just open a little bit, close it, work on that one thing. And so EMDR has a lot of protocols around that using the eye movement. And then and then from there, I realized, I still needed something else. Because there's a lot of parts that were happening, a lot of ego state parts that were not letting me in. And so I went, and I had been noticing for years internal family systems, and I went and got trained. And that is probably one of the most profound modalities and structures that I think we can put in place with therapy, because what it does, it normalizes the fact that we are all multipled. We all have aspects, many, many personality aspects to us. Many of these were defined early on in our lives. Many of that, us have parts that are, who were we when we had to go through this particular argument with our family? Who am I now that I had to go to first grade and perform? So these little personalities are living in us. And these aspects of us step forward when our body is feeling a certain way that has a certain somatic memory to it. They step forward and function. Have you ever had that conversation of, oh my gosh, I don't know what got into me. However, X, Y, and Z, I did this. I don't normally do this. Those are parts. Those are personality aspects of us. And some of these kids are walking around with these burdens. This is what Richard Schwartz refers to it as. And I love the language, actually, of internal family systems, because it's very non-blaming. And these children are carrying the memories of the past. They've learned something that got them through that time when we were 5 or 6. However, the shouting that they got to be heard in the family when they were 4 doesn't work in a board meeting now. So internal family systems is about connecting with, honoring those parts, and helping them understand, and this is where I love the spiritual aspects of this, that there is a higher, wiser energy within us that can manage that board meeting now, that can manage the relationship now. As these young ego state parts connect with the empathy, the love, the kindness of that higher, wiser energy within us. This is the spiritual. This is what we all pursue. This is what I refer to in my book as the soul. When they connect with that energy, they understand that there's a grown-up actually in the room, in the body room, and they can lay those old coping mechanisms down so that they can go back to doing what they wanted to do when they were children. And as a result, I have found through the years that the system, the body, the ego state that is combined with the soul state, that is combined with all these working parts like our vagus nerve that are keeping us alive as humans, we have more play in our system. We have more kindness because our children aren't on the ready trying to fight for us. And they will die for us. They will fight to the bitter end to protect us because they still think they're fighting something from the past. And therein lies the trauma bridge. I always say trauma is when your system, in this case through internal family systems, when your system cannot identify if the present is past or the past is present. There's a time loss that happens when we have trauma stored in our system, when these parts come forward because it feels like they got to be the ones that get up there and scream or do whatever they needed to do, shut us down, when they realize that this higher, wiser aspect of us can take over, they let the parent in the room do the thing and they go back to playing. And so we have more joy in our system. We have more relaxation. I love to equate, once we've processed some trauma out of our system, it's like we open up that window and let in fresh spring air into our bodies. And we have room, which goes to the gist of, my major message, which is then we can have that wisdom, that wise soul energy within us, whatever you want to call it, lead us. When we are cleared within our body of the protective mechanisms that have been keeping us in a survival cycle for so long, we can lead the way with our soul.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
The last time you were on, we discussed your award-winning book, Chakras and the Vagus Nerve, Tap into the Healing Combination of Subtle Energy and Your Nervous System. What inspired that book, and what did you share with readers?
Oh, thank you for asking that, because this goes back to what, you and I were talking about in regards to reading the energy and having this Reiki foundation and having this understanding of polyvagal theory, which, by the way, polyvagal theory posits that it is our vagus nerve that not just automatically keeps everything functioning, our heart beating, our lungs breathing, our digestion going, but it also is reading the room. It's also listening for danger. It's also what allows us to connect through the three branches, the ventral vagal connection branch, the safety branch, the sympathetic branch, the dorsal vagal immobility branch. So having this in mind, watching within a client's body how they are working through their trauma and connecting, I went, oh my gosh, a majority, not all, but a majority of the messaging was through the torso and aligning with the chakras, the 7 main chakras. And I had this work in my head for years. And I think we discussed the last time, I think 2 years ago I was on, the last time I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to write a book about this. But breaking that down a little bit, when you're looking at the root chakra and you have felt sense, you have felt memory, but you don't have what they call explicit memory. So in other words, you don't have chronological memory. You're feeling a knowing from childhood. It's in your body. It may have been related to traumas from the waist down. That becomes the energy and the information in the root chakra. Then I would watch people feeling a lot of memory and just having information that came up through the sacral chakra. That is the chakra that seems to be really connected to early childhood attachment, how we learn early to connect, through the messaging in our family, but also in our body. And so a lot of the information that people would pull in from early childhood about how they connected in ways that were helpful or not helpful or painful or calming seemed to have a messaging process around their sacral chakra, which is kind of near the belly button. Then you talk about identity, you talk about internal family systems. We're talking about that solar plexus of the mind, the identity. That is that part of us that just ends up burning sometimes, right? The charge, the got to get out there in the world, got to present myself. Those are the ego parts of us. And ego is not bad. We need identity. You need Victor Furman. The identity, the person that has been putting himself forward. I need CJ Llewelyn, the person that's putting myself forward. So we need identity. It's just when our identities get so burdened and so caught up in the world that this becomes the only identity we have. So a lot of that gets felt in the solar plexus. When you get up into the heart chakra, you're getting up into that safety branch of the vagus nerve, right? Everybody loves the heart chakra. But, by the way, everybody loves the heart chakra because the ventral vagal branch of our vagus nerve starts slowing our heart rate down, our beats between beat, that heart rate variability starts slowing down. Our blood pressure lowers. Suddenly we are feeling safer and calmer. As we get up into speaking, maybe we didn't feel safe. Maybe our voice didn't feel heard. Maybe we were told just plain old, don't talk. What you have to say isn't worthy. As you begin to process out those old messages, those old traumas, whatever they were in your system, however they applied meaning in your system to you, you are able to open up. You are able to speak. You are feeling safe enough to speak, which of course relates back down to the heart. And then I've noticed that as we would continue to clear out and process trauma, the third eye would shift to more meaning, more symbolism, more symbolic, what we would consider spiritual aspects, and less of the actual physical images that we get from early childhood trauma. So then we were able to really kind of feel a little bit more freer in our crown chakra at the top of our head, which, aligns with the fontanelle, right? When we were children. I'm 6 years older than my brother. I remember my mother saying, "Don't touch his soft spot." So that is how I started to just see the alignment with the chakras, the messaging. And of course, as I said, it's not completely limited to these 7 chakras. But when I work with clients, I hold the space for them. I don't ask them what chakra this is, because that takes them out of the actual somatic process. That takes them out of the felt experience, and it puts them into their brain. It puts them into that left brain, that explicit memory. The explicit memory comes into our mind, our brain. Our brain starts developing the ability to remember dates and times and places and names when we're about 3. But we have a lot of previous experience that we are storing in our bodies prior to that time. So when we can trust the felt experience, even when it doesn't make sense to the brain, we can open for possibilities of healing that we probably never even thought of before. I hope that answers your question, because I kind of went off on it.
No, absolutely. My guest is C.J. Llewelyn. We're going to be talking about her brand new book, Chakras, the Vagus Nerve, and Your Soul. C.J., please share with our listeners where they can get all of your books and find out more about you and your amazing work.
Thank you. My books are now available. They released April 8th. My new book, Chakras, the Vagus Nerve, and Your Soul, released. You can find this through Llewelyn.com. You can find, and I will break down the different spellings of my name and their name. No relation. You can find that at Barnes & Noble. You can find it at Amazon, almost anywhere where you can get books. You can find both of these books right now. My email is cj@cjllewelyn.com. And now let me break down the spelling of my name. It's 2 L's up front and 1 in the middle. That's how I like to break it down. cjllewelyn. And of course, you can go to my website, which is cjllewelyn.com. I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm playing around now on Blue Sky. And I actually got back on TikTok because I kind of like videos. I like playing with videos. So you can meet me there. Please say hello. Would love to engage with you.
And we'll be back with more of CJ after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, Om Times Radio, IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, C.J. Llewelyn, her new book, Chakras, the Vagus Nerve, and Your Soul, Journeying to Wellness Through Subtle Energy and Your Nervous System. C.J., what inspired this wonderful new book?
Well, I kind of wasn't done with the first one. I mentioned in the first one how I genuinely see our higher, wiser soul, spirit energy, however you want to refer to it as. And I get very open about the terminology of this because I think it's more of a applied experience. Soul has some religious connotations for some people that they're not comfortable with, and others absolutely feel very comfortable with that more Hellenistic use of the word. But I started to really see that when we are able to clear the memory data set, sometimes I refer to that as data sets, those trauma responses, those memory data sets in our nervous system, people change their own way of being in the world. Sometimes that's their own way of looking at things. There seems to be more applied empathy. There seems to be just a wider, softer range. That's soft but powerful range. That's that soul energy. And so I've been watching through the years, and by the way, I do my own trauma work. We're all not without having some of those data sets that hold us back, right? But they're there to protect us, by the way. So I just kind of wanted to explore a little deeper the aspect of how our soul light, our energy, is driving the machine of our body. When our soul leaves the body, and, we were just talking, and I appreciate you sharing that with me, the passing of your mom and the experience around that. When the soul leaves the body, our nervous system doesn't function, doesn't perceive, doesn't work. Our organs do not function any longer. So the soul is the energy. It is if you will, the gas. Sometimes when I have that conversation with people, using a car metaphor works. It's the journey, right? We need the vehicle to have the journey. Our essence takes on this vehicle for whatever reason the essence wants, from whatever experience the essence wants. But along the way, we get tripped up. We have to, like if it's our car, we have to do tune-ups. We have to clean, I don't know, are there spark plugs in the car anymore? I don't even know how the cars are made anymore. But we have to clean out the spark plugs. We have to clean out the air filter, right? We have to keep our engine running. We are not our car, right? Our body is the vehicle by which this light energy engages with this world. And I think I realized I have a pet peeve is too strong of a word, but I do have a strong leaning into the argument. I lean into the argument that while we are here, it isn't there's no dualism in this. Spirit is not good, body is not bad. And I see that a lot within a lot of our spiritual communities. No, we want to go spiritual. We don't like the stuff of our body. But what we do then is we become dissociated. We're not connecting with our body. We're not listening to what the messages of the body want. We are here in this vehicle to have whatever very unique experience our soul energy wants to have. And there's probably one point none of us can argue, take any theology out of this. We come into this world, this light, we have a light in our body because when it isn't there, our body doesn't function. And then we leave this world and we leave behind the structure that we used. So, us humans put a lot of meaning and theology and absolutes in between that. But whatever this light is here for, if we can just keep our engine thrumming, our engine working, and that also not only just goes to the making sure that we are psychologically sound with working through these traumas, knowing what our old patterns are so we can heal them, shift them, but it's keeping our bodies healthy. In this book, I get a little bit. Now, I'm a licensed professional counselor with a lot of foundation in polyvagal theory and a couple of other things. So I've learned how trauma and the body is affected emotionally and medically, and to listen in that regard. But I'm not a medical professional. However, it's really apparent that when we also do not take care of our physical selves, our emotional self collapses. And then we can't access that deeper light within us. We cannot access our soul. Our soul can't lead the way. When our car breaks down, we don't think about our car running except for when it doesn't. Then it becomes a priority. So I do just touch upon very, very basic aspects of how we can get problems with our vagus nerve, because that vagus nerve, boy, it is our soul. It is our wisdom nerve. It is what keeps us going. It is the main programming that runs our vehicle. When our vagus nerve is not cared for, our information that we gather also becomes it skews. We get skewed. So it is important for us to do the physical health work, the psychological health work, and that allows for the spiritual health work as well. So we can't discard our human experience. We're here for this. Teilhard de Chardin, we're here. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. So that's where I kind of really just wanted to emphasize and bring in some of my own experiences around a very brief temporary thing where my own vagus nerve got a little overstressed, and how I worked through some of this stuff too. This book is so not about me, but I just thought I would bring in that chapter, one of my personal experiences. So yeah, that's how I got started. I wasn't done.
Absolutely. Now, your car analogy is very interesting because you refer to this book as a travel guide.
Yep. It absolutely is, because this is why we're here. Anybody listening to your podcast has at least an innate sense that they are on a journey, but it is not an either or journey. It is a collective journey between the human experience and the soulful experience. And, we don't know what it is. There are aspects of this we will individually not know until we go back to where we came from.
And you share with readers that they should be curious in their travels. What is the importance of curiosity on this journey?
Well, I always say that the Buddhists had this right. And if we could follow some fundamental mindful principles, curiosity takes judgment out of our process. Just noticing, just being curious, have this pain in my back. I'm just going to be curious with it instead of, I have this pain in my back and I want it to go away now, because that creates more pain. Being curious about our sadness. Just holding the space to be curious about the experience of sad, or the curiosity sometimes of pain in our body leads us to the softness of our emotion. It may have a filter of some old experiences that we might need to process through, that we might be afraid of reliving. But if we can lead our lives through curiosity, we take out that very, I would say on some level, highly negative human experience of judgment, right? That sometimes we apply these things as humans that really don't help us along our path. And judgment is one of them. Judgment is a preconceived notion. Judgment has an absolute to it. Judgment of self, judgment of others. That doesn't get us anywhere. Being curious allows us to discern versus judge. Judge, you hit using the journey analysis, metaphor. You hit the dead end when you judge. When you discern, when you are curious, you are open to new roads. And you may be a little afraid, but you're still being curious along the way. And it may lead you to someplace you have never, ever been before, that you couldn't even imagine, and is so spectacular. But along the way, we have to just stay curious and not let judgment, not let fear, not let some of those limiting beliefs stop us on this journey that we've got going on here.
It's interesting. Eugene Ionesco, and I'm going to paraphrase, said that enlightenment starts with the question, not the answer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you want to look at the difference, maybe perhaps between our physical selves and that eternal light self, the light is nothing but a question. Our internal light is nothing more than curiosity.
Absolutely. With each chapter, you offer readers exercises to follow. Please tell us a little about these exercises and what they may learn from them.
So in the first book, I do a lot of exercises that I would utilize in my work with clients, which is breaking down the concept of top-down processing, which is thought, explicit memory, and utilizing maybe language and words to send information down. But bottom up, right? Our nervous system has felt experience, has perception, has images, symbols, that sometimes the mind doesn't like the dubiousness of that, right? So I try to do a lot of bottom up in both books, but this book I do a lot of allowing for different movements to just be curious with the experience that's happening within your body. I actually did a lot of my own meditation on my own health. And I then saw a few of these experiences, or exercises, I should say. And then I worked on them myself, and I actually found some relief. But again, those don't have the validity that something like IFS or EMDR has, where there's 30 years of research. Some of the things that I bring to the table in this book are very intuitive. But I also offer that listen to, and there's a lot of this in this book, listen to your own intuition. And I offer some exercises in this new book about how to listen to your own personal experience. What do you need? We never ask that question. I ask that question in my sessions, and I will ask that with clients I've worked with for years. What do you need? And I still get that deer in the headlight look, because we don't stop enough to ask that question for ourselves. So a lot of these exercises, I hope, will bring people down to being able to ask that question for themselves.
It's funny, when I was training salespeople in the industry that I was involved with for 44 years, one of the questions that I would ask them is, what does the customer really want? Which basically is the same thing as what do you need? And it's something that people don't think about. They go for sometimes the quick answer, the quick sale in the case of sales, but not really the overall picture of what the outcome can be if you truly look at what they truly need.
Right. And we're driven by it, which is really kind of funny if you think about it. We're driven by that. And sometimes we don't differentiate between our want versus our need, but we are still driven by it. We still act from it, but we haven't slowed down enough to integrate the answer, to ask the question so that we can really genuinely integrate an answer to it. We're just constantly driven. We're constantly, what do we need? What do we need? What do I want? What do I want? But we never actually ask the question. So what would you say? You're driven by the question more than the answer? Mm-hmm. Or no, you're driven by the answer more than the question, but you haven't really defined the answer.
Correct. Absolutely. One of the exercises that you offer is called Earth to Sky Zip. What is it and how does it work?
I love this exercise. And it's taken from the movement of Qigong, which I'm starting to get very intrigued by and want to study more. And if you're in a safe place, do this. If you're driving, do not do this. Just as an experiment, imagine yourself from your crown all the way down to your root chakra. Just do an unzip. Like imagine there's a zipper there and just do an unzip. Now, you could be sitting, you don't even have to touch the ground right now. Do a zip up. Zip up from the root, from your lap, all the way up your mid-torso to the top of your crown. And notice how you feel. I haven't said, every time I do this with somebody, they say, I feel more contained. I feel more grounded. I feel less like I'm falling, like my energy is falling apart. So when we can do that, especially outside, if we can do that outside, we don't have to be outside. Imagine reaching down to the ground, right? Pulling the energy from the earth, pulling it all the way up between your legs, like a zipper, big zipper that's been unzipped. Pull it up, up, up through your legs, over your root chakra, your sacral, your solar plexus, your heart, your throat, all the way up to the crown, all the way up to the top of your head. And I actually will, as I'm talking, I'm doing this, no one can see me, I'm extending my arm outward. I zip way up to where my arm is extended. And it's just such a grounding experience. I bring that all, and I bring these things, by the way, into my therapy practice. These are the things that I also allow my clients to really work with their subtle energies in that regard. So did you try it, Victor, while I was describing it?
I'm still there.
You do. And if you're feeling out of sorts, do that. I'm telling you, it is fantastic.
Absolutely. That earthing aspect is very important also.
Yes. I do mention earthing I forgot I mentioned earthing in the book. I live in the city, but I had to have some property behind me. So I found my new house has a lovely backyard smack dab in the city. So I hit both my extroverted aspects where I can get out, walk around, see my neighbors, do my little community thing. And then I come home and I lay on my grass. The earthing, there's studies that are being done. HeartMath has been doing a lot of studies in this regard as to how we pull in the energy from the earth, and we need this for our bodies. Our bodies are of this earth, and we need that grounding. We need that connection.
My guest is C.J. Llewelyn. Her new book, Chakras, the Vagus Nerve, and Your Soul. We'll be back with more after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, C.J. Llewelyn, her new book, Chakras, the Vagus Nerve, and Your Soul. C.J., how do the chakras interface with the vagus nerve?
So we have endpoints, if you think of it that way. Nadis are more of a Hindu wiring of the chakras going upward, but we have endpoints to our nervous system. And of course we have, by the way, we have hundreds of chakras throughout our body because we have thousands of nerve endings as well. But the ancients seem to believe that these were nerve endings, but they didn't have access. They didn't have the scientific equipment that we have now for these nerve endings to be viewed. But we end up with some different points where our nervous system ends. And I have always maintained that this is where this is how I break it down in the book. Our soul energy is what's charging our nervous system. It just is. Because as we discussed in our last segment, when our light leaves this body, our body's just nothing more than a mass. So it is charging through the nervous system, almost like electricity goes through wiring in our house. And when it does that, it certainly does not end at the end points of these nerves. It extends outward. And where the nerve centers are a little bit more condensed, we end up with these energy centers called chakras, which, from the Sanskrit view of the world, that's where our energy centers are that are felt more intensely. However, these expand outward. I don't even get into auras because I'm giving enough. I'm giving too many layers in the book, not too many layers, but I'm giving a lot of layers in the book to begin with. So we end up with this energy that extends outward. Along the way, our soul energy, through this conversation with the chakras, through the charging of the chakras, those data sets that have been set within our nervous system are also combining with this energy center. So when we talk about how people talk about, I have to open up this chakra, or this chakra's carrying this or that, it's actually from the inside out job, right? Because we may be holding on to memories from early childhood that we feel or may be perceived as the root chakra is blocked. But what we might be holding on to is trauma around the dorsal vagal complex, around the sympathetic complex that reach down into this area. I'm trying not to get too sciencey here, that need to be processed through other avenues beyond just the energy work. So that then when we shift our nervous system, when we clear trauma from our bodies, when we move in ways that allow these memories and these experiences to reform in different, safer ways, our chakras, our energy centers shift. They shift naturally. We can do energy work from the outside in, but the permanent shifts come from that inside out, because that's the data sets. It's what I mean, it's not an official term. I'm using that to help people develop a sense of image here. But that's where the data sets hold on to images and experiences that extend outward into our etheric realm, the etheric realm being the energy that we feel, the energy that we feel from other people as we're just simply standing next to them, the energy that walks in the room before we do.
What is the importance of breath work on this journey?
So breath work, obviously, intuitively, we've known from the beginning of time that breath work is important. What breath work does is it can engage the nervous system in ways that are very invigorating, that engages sympathetic nervous, the nervous system in a sympathetic way that is safe. But also on the exhale, we are slowing down the heart rate, right? Those beats between beats get longer. There is safety that becomes more established within the system. Our engagement with slowing down the breath slows down, as we were talking earlier, the blood pressure. It slows everything down to send messages of safety and engagement with the safety branch of the vagus nerve. So breath work is very important. When we are stressed and we're only breathing from the top of our lungs, this branch, this safety branch of our vagus nerve, is not getting that full message that we're okay. Because when we're having to run, right? We're having to run from the tiger. We're having to run from a scary person that's running after us. We're not supposed to sit there and breathe deeply. Our body shifts into more sympathetic engagement. We get shorter breaths. Our muscles tighten. Blood gets, the blood pressure pushes through our muscles a lot harder and faster because our muscles are tightened, because we are engaged to move. We are engaged to run. And we are engaged to keep ourselves safe in that way. Fight, you hear the fight or flight response. Is afterwards. The deeper breath work can come in once we're safe as well, because then we start sending safety cues back into the system. So if we're not thinking, if we're thinking in a way, talk about judgment, we're thinking in ways that are judgmental of self or others, right there our brain is sending cues to our body that we're not safe. Well, this person is this, that person is this. That person believes this, so we're not safe with this person. None of this is a fact, but it registers in the nervous system, and the vagus nerve is a fact. And if so-and-so isn't safe because they don't believe what we believe, well, there we are, we're off to the races. And we're engaging our sympathetic branches, our movement, our fight branches. We're tight, of course, we're sitting in our office typing away. We are sending mixed signals to our body. So knowing our thoughts, how they affect and send messages down, that top-down processing we were talking about earlier, how they affect our system is vital to our own reality, our own engagement in the world, our own health, physical, that actually mental is physical, psychological is a physical health as well.
And how does this reflect in the body-to-soul approach?
So when we are feeling safe, we are able to access that light. When we are feeling that we have to run from, I'm trying to think of the lion that escapes from the zoo, we just got to get the heck out of there. We have to run and climb up that tree or jump into the car. This is when we have to become a very human experience. This is when our nervous system says, none of this stuff matters. None of this stuff is going to matter until you get yourself into a safe place. So that is that leaning in and leaning out of the human experience. You're not going to sit there and continue to meditate when an angry lion is running after you to attack you. You're going to find a way out of that situation. So being able, once you are safe, first of all, having your body identify safety. This is part of the trauma work. And this is part of what I help my clients with, is pulling in actual cues of physical safety when they are actually safe, but their mind might not believe it is. So cueing the body differently, allowing for safety to integrate into the system, allows the body to calm enough, and then that light is in there.
And as you share, you have a very humorously titled chapter, What Happens in Vegas Stays in Vegas If You're Not Careful.
It's the whole reason I wrote that book, is so that I could actually use that title.
And of course, we're not talking about Las Vegas. We're talking about
no, it's a VAGUS. Right. I'm glad they let me use that title for that chapter, because I say that all the time to my clients. Look, what happens in your Vegas stays in your Vegas. Because our nervous system is brilliant. It is smart. It is reading the room. It is looking for cues, and it has been before we were born, right? If our parents were arguing, if there was a lot of volatility, our nervous system's already getting programmed for that, because it's feeling, right? It's feeling the nervous system of the mother. It's picking up these cues. It's establishing what's to come. So it's already in there. What happens in Vegas, what gets programmed in, stays there until we are aware that it is programmed there. Then we have full freedom and capacity and opportunities to shift this and work differently. And that's the honoring of the body as part of the spiritual process, by the way.
My guest, C.J. Llewelyn, her brand new book, Chakras, the vagus nerve, and your soul, journeying to wellness through subtle energy and your nervous system. CJ, please, one more time, share with our listeners where they can get your books and find out more about you and your amazing work.
Thank you. So, cjllewelyn.com. I'm continuing to sort of build out my website as a place where we can come and just read and just have a community here. And by the way, my Llewelyn is 2 L's up front and 1 in the middle. So LLEWELYN, cjllewelyn.com. I am on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm starting to play around again on TikTok. And I'm even on, where else am I? What did I say I was on before? And I'm trying out a little bit of Blue Sky, so I'm playing around on there as well. And you can get my books anywhere they're selling books right now. You can go to llewelynbooks.com. Different spelling, no relation. That's 2 L's up front and 2 in the middle, by the way. So it's not a complicated name, but it looks very complicated. So llewelynbooks.com. You can go to Barnes & Noble, access on Amazon. They are in your bookstores. And if they aren't, just let them know. They need to put it in there.
CJ, I think we should all get together and have a conference in Vegas.
Absolutely. And then what happens in Vegas, we'll just kind of keep it to ourselves.
That's right. CJ,
or not keep it to ourselves, bring it to our therapists.
That's right. CJ, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of this wisdom in the world that needs this kind of wisdom now. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor, for having me. It was good to be back.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Furman. Have a wonderful week.